Okay, so just kind of switching topics a little bit then. One of the things that you've kind of brought to my attention, and again, I've noticed this as well, is that a lot of the products and solutions that are out there today are kind of heavily focused on detection and response. And I think that and as you've mentioned here, I think it's been kind of prevalent since, or it's become more prevalent since kind of 2017, 2018. But we're not really talking about protection and prevention so much. So why do you think that shift has started from around then?
Yeah, I think it's the rise of highly public breaches and ransomware. I mean, that's when we're really seeing it hit mainstream news, not just our news. In tech circles and on Reddit boards, we're actually seeing it now, covered on cable television news networks, and it's moved into the public eye. And I think that's, led organizations to think more about response, because detection and response at that point in time was still in its, early days. And I think it's received a lot of focus. But I also, the trend I'm seeing kind of since that 2017, 2018 timeframe is the discussion around protection and prevention has sidelined a lot. And I just read a book that opened my eyes to it. It's called A Vulnerable System by Andrew Stewart, and I highly recommend it for anyone in the cybersecurity industry. It's a book about the kind of the history of cybersecurity, from the early days of computing through now. And he proposes in near the end of that book that we have given up on protection because it's too complicated. It's so complex, and instead, started focusing predominantly on detection and response, just because there's so many things coming at cybersecurity professionals or organizations, all at once. And he isn't proposing that that's right. He's just observing that seems to be where the industry has gone. And I think that you're seeing now in the industry, the rise of things like cloud workload protection, is refocusing, or cloud posture management is refocusing on having to get kind of those fundamentals right so that your detect and response becomes more reasonable to manage. I think we have to bring it back to a focus on protection and prevention. MDR is really, or detection and response is really, it's one component of kind of three big layers of the security model.
Absolutely. I mean, we couldn't agree more. I think that we quite often get into discussions around the capabilities and what we can do in order to detect if data is leaving a company, for example, talking about DLP solutions and strategies. We obviously talk about ransomware all the time as well, and understanding detection and response mechanisms for ransomware. But, we should really be making sure that the systems and I think you referred to it earlier as the kind of attack surface is completely minimalized. And we're talking about adopting a least privilege model. We're talking about ensuring that we don't have any unnecessary open shares. I mean, there is and there always has been this kind of fine balance between business productivity and security, right? And we want to make things as easy to do as possible within the organization with as less friction as possible. But yeah, just these kind of simple things like understanding if there are any stale accounts in, say, Active Directory, making sure that if people, I was talking to someone the other day, and their kind of strategy for ensuring that if they were in a migration project, and they were kind of, the way that they were validating if people needed access to data before they ran the migration was to ask them, which was like, everyone's going to say yes to that, right? They're going to say, oh, I might have used that document in the last 6 years. Yeah, I still need that document. But what we really need to do is be analyzing those permissions and looking at that activity of those people, and then consolidating this information to say, look, quite simply, this guy hasn't accessed this document in the last 6 months. He clearly doesn't need access to it, So yeah.
You know, I have several maxims I live by, but one of them I like to remind myself of as I'm in these situations right here is that, you know, humans are we're really good at like context. We're really good at kind of understanding a problem and why something exists, and looking at it in unique ways and being creative and coming up with solutions. But we are entirely inefficient and inconsistent. And, you know, humans just aren't consistent, period. But machines, their superpower is that they're really efficient and really consistent. And this is one of those moments where you have to, you know, with all things, if you can mix a human and a machine together, you usually can solve the problem. And so, you know, in that scenario, using machines to watch and understand user privilege and user access and what they actually need to get to, and then letting a human make decisions based on context of, that user may need to use that file one time in the next 6 years. Well, a human can make that decision once in those 6 years. Let the machine spend the other, you know, I don't know, I can't do the math really quickly, 1,500 days, 1,800 days, you know, ensuring that access is not in place and that we are at least privileged.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So kind of learning, essentially assisted machine learning, but learning that user's behavior over a kind of a period of time, and then making tweaks to the, just slightly adjusting the policies that are in place and kind of giving access as and when, and then just assisting the machine based upon our inputs. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.